Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rocksure Ramblings, where I discuss topics around digital marketing, marketing technology, and marketing operations for the financial services industry. My name is Fernando Pena, and I'm the founder of Rocksure, where I can help you master the digital channel. And today's topic doesn't really have to do with digital. It has to do more so with marketing fundamentals. But I do believe it's something that I've received a lot of pushback on and required convincing, especially to executives, that this is something that should be done when you are embarking upon your digital journey. And that topic, of course, are control groups and testing. The question that I get is it really necessary? And so, what I'd like to do is just take a few minutes to discuss why I feel it's important and how you may be able to navigate a lot of internal resistance and challenges that you'll encounter in attempting to use these tactics in your digital marketing journey. So we'll undergo a basic review. Can you do without resolving conflicts, and then also what the final benefits end up being. So, for basic review, what I'm talking about here when I discuss control groups are random samples of target audiences that are intended to be used as baselines. And so, what that means is that if you have a group of, like, let's say 100 potential individuals that you'd like to market an offer to, you may want to take 10% of that audience, so 10 individuals, and just put them aside and do not employ any sort of marketing treatments on them. And there's several reasons for that, and I'll get into a little bit more of it as we go further into this presentation. But it is a sound strategy when it comes to making sure that you can track what is taking place and if your actions are actually positive or not. So testing, on the other hand, it includes different permutations and variations of messaging, calls to action, imagery, timing, and many others. And I've discussed this in some detail in the personalization videos, as well as the video about AI, where there's just a number of different combinations that can be made use of. And the only way to really tell which one's going to work is by testing. Now, the problem with all this is that there's likely going to be concerns about limiting the responding audience. And so, that is, if you have a finite audience, which most of you do, you may not want to necessarily limit some of your best customers and by putting them into a control group. And that is a valid concern that we can address here. There's also the effort required in order to create these different permutations. So that's probably some resistance that you'll receive as well, as it takes long enough just to get one piece of created approved from legal, risk, compliance, et cetera. And now if you're going to ask to have these large number of variations approved, it's just going to set back the timeline a little bit. So that is, again, a valid concern. And then when you're talking about salespeople, who are trying to, and their livelihood depends upon sales, there could be concerns around declining revenue and also impact to their compensation. So those are our concerns that will have to be addressed and we'll discuss here in today's presentation. So, can you do without these control groups and testing? And the answer here is that yes, certainly you can. But in today's highly competitive space, if you're trying to maximize your investment in digital and you're trying to make sure that the performance of that channel is as best as it can be, then you really do need to create a control group and also do a number of different testing scenarios. If you do without this, you'll potentially lose the opportunity to improve results and performance. And the reason for that is because you really don't know where you started from. I mean, you can see where you started from an overall perspective, but you won't understand if that is because of what you did or if it's because of market conditions or just a competitive environment. You also have the inability to decide to figure out exactly which of your tactics or strategies really did have an impact on your customer base, and this is because again you have not established a baseline, and because of that you're unable to really do any sort of real tracking and analytics. So as a result of that, you're going to have flawed or skewed models and analysis. So your metrics really are going to be just sort of a point in time, but not necessarily in comparison to what the rest of the audience may have done without the actions that you took. So it's really important, given the fact that in order to be able to really succeed in digital, you need to track and report and analyze virtually everything you're doing. And the only way to do that is to, again, have a baseline to be able to establish that this is where we need to go. And when it comes to testing and variations, again, that's critical because everything evolves very quickly in digital. So by making sure that you are ahead of the curve and you're testing what resonates with your audience, you'll be able to make sure that you're getting the most response for the different tactics that you're employing. Now, inevitably, as I mentioned earlier, there are going to be conflicts in this because of the fact that you have, again, a finite audience, and there's likely going to be some individuals that fall into the control group that are considered some of your more desirable customers. And with that, your sales teams and those that are, again, judged on performance figures are going to resist wanting to place these individuals into a no treatment category. So what needs to happen is that some sort of a playbook has to be established with clear rules of engagement. So this might mean that there's instances where if a marketing blitz is going to take place, the salespeople need to observe that some of their key customers are going to end up in a control group. Now, it's not to say that if like let's say you have personalization triggers or event-based triggers that are taking place with AI or just using conditional logic take place, and an action needs to be performed to keep a great customer from leaving the organization, that you don't do it. But more often than not, try to avoid any sort of additional treatment so that your metrics are not going to be impacted by those actions. But by all means, the priority here is to make sure that you do maintain your existing customer base and that you keep them happy. But again, let's try to make sure that we minimize any sort of involvement if they happen to be part of a control group. You'll need to also likely adjust compensation models and performance metrics. So, if the performance metric says you have to reach out to 100% of your book every quarter, and you're doing, let's say, quarterly outreaches, and this individual ends up in a control group, then you may have to adjust expectations just to make sure that it is fair and that you're not asking your teams to try to meet some sort of expectations that cannot be met based on the fact that some of these individuals really shouldn't be reached upon. You'll need to emphasize data capture as a necessary part of marketing and sales. And what I mean by that is that when you're doing testing and control groups, you're trying to capture data and you're using this data to help refine your approach on a go forward basis. So that has to be sort of the mindset and emphasized throughout the entire organization, that this is something that's critical to not only marketing, but to the success of the entire structure of the organization, and make sure that it's really everyone buys into this, because ultimately you'll be able to improve when you have this data at your disposal and show and demonstrate that you have had successes based on the data that you've captured. But probably the most important is to practice transparency of the marketing calendar, the marketing strategy, and what's really taking place, so that the sales team doesn't necessarily feel alienated and that you're trying to hide this segment of the customer base to them. And instead, you're showing them that this is what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to get you more data. We're trying to get you more targeted leads, and really get you in a place that is much more beneficial and conducive to a positive selling environment, because it works great for the clients and it also works when prospects, and it works well for sales as well. There's less resistance to products and services being sold. Now, when you get all of this going, then what are the benefits? And so there's going to be unquestionable impact results. And what I mean by that is not necessarily that everything's going to magically work on your behalf, but there will be data demonstrating and showing and illustrating what has taken place. So you can show that, okay, we improved performance based on our observations of what this controlled group did compared to what our targeted audience did. And if you don't have successes, then again, you can see that, oops, we made a mistake. We did something that unfortunately made our target audience not respond as favorably as the control group. It also helps you continually refine your targeted message, your offers, your creative, everything that has to do with marketing, and you'll get lessons learned on what are the successful tactics, what works for you. Keep in mind that especially in financial services, marketing is a very personal type of process where your message has to resonate with those buyers, and by testing and learning over the different tactics that you've employed, you'll be able to figure out exactly what resonates with your buyer and make sure that your offers and your messaging reflects that. It also helps tremendously when it comes to development of predictive models and reporting that can be trusted and relied upon. If you have questionable sources for analytics, then of course your judgment and maybe even your reputation is potentially going to be damaged by the fact that you don't have reliable data to base your observations on. And now, especially with AI coming up, you need great data to make sure that the foundation of these systems is well populated so that it can make decisions on your behalf using the best data available. Also, one side benefit here is the potential avoidance of audience fatigue. So let's say that you're running offers on a continual basis and you're always hitting the same individuals. Eventually, they just become blind to whatever it is that you're communicating to them. So by making use of control groups and tests, you're going to, number one, create different variations of that message that they'll see. Number two, they may not necessarily get every single offer because they may fall into the control group occasionally. So that just helps to make sure that everything remains fresh and relevant and that they're not being just hit over the head with your offers on a continual basis. That may work in some cases, but I do think that, again, with financial services, you're looking at making sure that it's the right messaging and not just a message. Because there's way too much noise out there, and you need to make sure that your message is spot on. So that was it for today. Again, this was more of a fundamental approach to digital marketing in terms of foundational skills and tactics that need to be employed before you embark upon this journey for digital. But if you do like some of this content and you'd like to discuss it a little bit more in detail, please feel free to reach me. You can see my contact information on this slide, and we will see exactly how we can work within your environment and try to maximize your use of digital. So until the next time, thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you in the next video. Bye-bye.